Gotta get all professional. Stop.
Huddle around as Climbing the Pocket Network presents Jason and the boys talking everything Minnesota Vikings. Watch the countdown timer.
Away we go again. Lost like I'm lost on purpose. If found, please return to. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before when I get home, Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before when I get home, My vision blurry, I'm paying the cost. I'm not enough. In fact, it's even better when you're not involved. When I miss your call, I feel that I evolve. Cause as you mentioned, I am more dependent than a college student on their parents or an old person on their pension. Not to mention, when you hit me on WhatsApp without attention, and a bad booty bitch watch, then she looks tempting. Look, my Achilles heel is when I say what I feel, you say, baby, come home, and I don't think that I will, cause all this motherfucking stress is gonna get me killed. Woo. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before when I get home, Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before when I get home,
Huddle around as Climbing the Pocket Network presents Jason and the boys talking everything Minnesota Vikings.
No, I can't play these games. No, you can't disrespect and call me names. Sending me signals like you about to switch lanes. Well, go on, do your thing. Go on, do your thing. I mix champagne and propane, get lit. I'm trying to forget all the things that you said, all the things that we did. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before when I get home, Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road? I've been here before when I get home, Watch the breakdown. And I get home when I get home. You just gonna act like we normal now. Good luck. Don't you try to call me with that bullshit, telling me it's sorry. You act too quick. That's somebody else's problem now. You're somebody else's problem now. Don't you try to call me with that bullshit, telling me it's sorry. You act too quick. That's somebody else's problem now. You're somebody else's problem now.
Okay,
Whoa.
we are back. We are live. We are experiencing technical difficulties, but we are going to ride through this thing. Football is almost back. The teams are coming back to the facilities, which means the arguments are kicking off on social media. So we had to get the whole crew back together so we could chop it up, so we could talk about some things. Oh yeah, I guess I should introduce myself. It's been a minute. My name's Jason Brown. You can find me on Twitter at BrownJason. And we're just going to go through it real quick, and then we're going to jump in. My man, the good doctor, the most hated man on Vikings Twitter, Dr. Eric Eager. How you doing? How you been?
I'm wonderful. I mean, look, the summer's been great. I was complaining to Nick about how much work there is to do, which is a good thing. I'm excited that, even though, things are weird, we're probably going to have a football season. We probably even have preseason games next month. And we have, we have the Vikings coming up, and the Vikings are nothing if not a fun topic this time of year.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Hope springs eternal at this time of year. Nick, I'm just letting you know, given the makeup of our group today, you are the representative for the Vikings fandom. You are here to let your Homer flag fly because,
Okay.
these other gentlemen, they've been a bit realistic, as they might call it, pessimistic as others might say. But Nick, you are a man of the people. Even when you're not with us on Twitter, you're shit posting on Reddit and Discord and all the other places Vikings fans can be found. The most wholesome man on Vikings Twitter, Nick Olson. How you doing? How you been?
I'm good. If I'm the lawyer here, I'm happy to represent the people of Vikings Twitter versus Dr. Eric Eager.
There we
We're
go.
ready to get going.
There we
Oh, my
go.
goodness.
And
No, but I mean the
last-
Vikings are always fun, but it's been a crazy week between the Rodgers drama, D.D. Westbrook, everything else that's been going on.
D.D. Westbrook killed the salary cap. Like, the cap no longer matters. And I think about this, like, of all the people that have been succumbed to the salary cap, D.D. Westbrook broke through.
And I know Flip's happy. That's a perfect segue because all season long, Flip's been telling us that, like, we don't need a DD. And here we are. We got a DD Westbrook. Flip, is this Tajay Sharp 2.0 or is this something different? But I guess we don't need to get to that. Before we get to all that, Flip, how are you doing? Before I get you fired up talking about wide receiver 3, how are you doing? How you been? I follow you on Instagram. I feel like every week you're in another place that I can't afford to go to. What's it like living life, up there on the level of one Flip Mazzi?
Oh, it's pretty good, man. But it's also good to be back with the crew. We got Mary. It's been too long, Mary. We got Raymond. We got the fans in the comments. So it's good to be back. August is always a crazy month when you're a Minnesota Vikings football fan. And it's honestly been that way for the last 4 years because no one knows what the F is about to go down. Will we even make it to week 1 with the roster intact? And if we do, how do we look, going week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals? So I'm excited. I'm excited to kick this thing off.
All right, so let's jump right in. Let's jump into one of the things that it caused a bit of a stir, a bit of fun, I think, for us to kind of kick around and discuss things. When we were talking show notes, David was like, ordinal rankings? What are we talking about? What are we doing here? But it's something that comes up often, I think, when we talk about the Vikings, and especially when we talk about Kirk Cousins, which, there's a funny thing that happens. It doesn't matter what you post about the Vikings. Somebody will take it as a slight against Kirk Cousins and come in to tell you where Kirk Cousins ranks amongst quarterbacks in the NFL. And saying that Kirk Cousins is a top 10 quarterback is something that Vikings fans will often say. It's something Nick has said on this very show. Eric, you've taken umbrage with ordinal rankings. And so I would like you just to take a moment to maybe explain why telling us where Kirk Cousins ranks just from like 1 to 10, 1 to 15, 1 out of 32 doesn't actually tell us as much as maybe we think it does. And then Nick, obviously as the representative of the people, I will give you the next word to kind of hop in and give your side of this conversation.
Yeah, so on about a month ago on my podcast, the PFF Forecast, George asked me on a whim to rank quarterbacks, and to Flip's, I think, consternation, I did it the only way I sort of know how to, which is to say how much does each quarterback add or subtract to the betting total. The betting, the spread. And we have a model. It's right there. Like the fact that people were so surprised that I believe this was interesting because I literally have these posted on pff.com, and I have had it for the whole offseason. And so I had, and this is again, the difference between ratings and rankings. Because if a rating is like a number, so for example, I have Patrick Mahomes. If he were to be out for a game against Kansas City and you would replace him with Taylor Heineke, it would be worth 8.5 points to the point spread. You see what I'm saying? I have him like a point better than a combination of Wilson, Rodgers, and Brady, all of whom I have at 7.5 points better. So like those three guys, I have to somehow rate, right? Or I have to somehow rank, even though I sort of think that they're all kind of the same, you know? So down the list a little bit, there are Dak Prescott, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, and Derek Carr, who I all have within about 0.5 point of each other. And there are three players who I have at the same rating. So I think if you take Kirk Cousins off the Vikings, it's worth about 5.5 points to the point spread. So almost an entire touchdown. I have the same rating for Mayfield and Jackson for different reasons, but that's what I had. And so I just had I picked Cousins out of those three as just to say I said his name first, and like that ended up being this idea that Kirk was in my mind which again I don't have a problem with because he is like the 8th next person if you choose it that way. But I had him somewhere between 7 and 11. Yeah, and I think that that's a very fair rating of him. I think Nick will agree. I don't know if Flip will agree anymore. But I do think that if you take Kirk Cousins off the Vikings in a random game and put in, Jake Browning, like it is about a touchdown to the point spread. So like, and there aren't that many quarterbacks. Like if you take, this is a question. If you take Jared Goff off of the Lions, what's the change to the point spread?
3.5.
Yeah, I think our numbers say it's 3. I think Tannehill's 3.5. That's where I'm a little bit, because I've never seen Tannehill play well without a great offensive coordinator. I've seen Cousins play well without a great offensive coordinator. So I have him a little higher, even though Tannehill's played better over the last couple of years, or played as well, let's say, over the past couple of years. I have Stafford at 4, which is the same number, by the way, I have as for Flamus Winston. And I went by those ratings. And there are rookies who I have a little lower because we haven't seen them before. There's uncertainty there. But Cousins, you have a humongous set of data that says that on a per game basis, if you take him out and put in incompetence, it's going to have an effect on the team that's actually sizable. I think that this is still compatible with the idea and the opinion I've espoused over the last 3 years, which is he's still not good enough necessarily to win a Super Bowl making what he's making. Like I think that those are compatible. I don't know. Like that seems to be where the confusion has come from.
So, Nick, you now have the unenviable task of stepping in to defend how Eric, who has Kirk Cousins ranked higher than some of the staunchest Kirk Cousins defenders on Vikings Twitter, is somehow seen as a Kirk hater, though Eric has Kirk at 8, and others might have Kirk as like merely top 10 or like in some even 11th. How is it that those things don't match up? And what is it that you've been seeing of late that maybe makes you feel that Kirk is again being disrespected? Because I know that, you started on one side and then swung to the other because you felt that your public opinion had shifted too far away from where Kirk actually was. Where are we now? And is Kirk again at a place where he is being disrespected? And does Kirk being a top 10 quarterback, what does that actually mean? Like, does it mean he's elite? Does it mean that he's great? That's a great question from Miles. What does that actually mean in terms of how good he is or what tier of quarterbacks he's in?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. I think, obviously Kirk is not in the same tier as the elite guys. He's not a Mahomes guy. He's not going to carry a team on his back all by himself. I do think he can elevate the level of play of guys around. He's a really accurate quarterback. He's a really smart quarterback. He takes care of the football. Those are things that elevate the team around him. But, he's not Tom Brady. Stylistically, he might be similar to a Drew Brees type, but he's not Drew Brees, or at least he's not prime Drew Brees. Now that Brees is out of the league. So is he top 10? That means something. It's a game of there's 32 teams in the NFL. If you have a better quarterback than 20 of them, that puts you in a pretty good spot. Still, you're still banking on a lot of things to go right to win the Super Bowl. So that's where I think it's tough. I think maybe one point of things that I'm still struggling with, and this gets back to the big Fred Warner debate we had last week when the 49ers extended him. Is the opportunity cost of the cap space that you have to spend. Because the big problem, I think, with a lot of the people who say, like, yeah, Kirk is good, but the but there is always, look at how much they're paying him. To me, the quarterback is the most important position in football. You want to invest in it. You want to invest, whether that's draft capital or whether that's cap space. What I still struggle with is the Vikings are paying Kirk like $31 million a year on average. Maybe he'll get bumped up to like 35. That's the going rate of quarterbacks right now. That's a lot of cap space. That's what, like 13, 15% of the cap right now. So that's like, I'm not saying that's not a small cost, but I think you're still getting a big return on investment there with your cap dollar. You're better off spending $35 million on Kirk Cousins than, I don't know, spending $20 million on Anthony Barr and $15 million on whoever. It's tough to think of. Yes, there's two things going on here. One is that it's really hard to win a Super Bowl, and when there are 7 quarterbacks in the league who are like several tiers above Kirk Cousins. Hey, Miles, in the NFL.
You've got Miles is here. Can Miles hear us though? Like, how does this work? Because I know we've tried this before with Nick. Like, Miles, can you hear us? Or do we just get to like
Miles? But like Nick, can we come back to this idea though? Because I think the issue is that when you look at this from like a surplus value standpoint, and again, this isn't something that like
yes. Can you guys hear Miles?
Hold on.
We can hear Miles. Miles cannot hear us. But Eric is responding to Nick's piece. David, when it's time for me to throw it to Miles, I will just tell you what to tell Miles because we got to get his thoughts on D.D. Westbrook. But we got a couple segments between now and then. So Eric, respond, and then Flip, jump in because I can feel you over there. Like you're ready to get in this conversation about kind of Kirk Cousins.
How long have we been talking about this dude for?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think the tricky thing is that the difference between Kirk and Kirk is probably half as valuable as like Aaron Rodgers at his best, Patrick Mahomes at his best, Tom Brady at his best. So when you think about like
I can hear you guys, it's late as fuck.
You guys don't have to worry about this, but it's like it's worth about $9 million per quarterback per win above replacement. So if Kirk is 2.5 WAR, then his value to the team is about 2.5 WAR. So you're looking at like $25-ish million, right? So and if he's paid that, that's great, David. Right? If he's paid 35, he's actually a negative to the team. Whereas a guy like Brady, who's worth like 4 or 5 wins, now you're talking about $45 million. And if he's paid the going rate, he's a surplus value. And it's literally like, I think that the issue is that the sensitivity to brilliance at the quarterback position is so much like it's both sides. If the Vikings played a terrible quarterback in Kirk's place, they're a 3-win team. But it's asymmetric. Like I don't think Kirk can double his value and get into that Brady conversation, which again, going from Kirk to Brady is an extra like Anthony Barr on top of it's like you don't even have to make the choice of getting rid of him. It's you get that quarterback and Anthony Barr. You know what I'm saying? And like that's like what I worry about as far as like the conversation. I think is a like I don't know if we truly appreciate like the difference between what it means to be the 8th best quarterback and what it means to be like the 2nd best quarterback.
All right, Flip, final word on this before we get into some of the more recent news to come out about our Vikings. Also, Flip, I'm not sure if you're also looking at Twitter, but Ali has just said he just realized that you look like Jamal Crawford. So I'm not sure what really to do with that, but I figured I would pass the information along. Are you any good at basketball, Flip?
Well, I mean, they did ask me to get over to Tokyo and help out the U.S. team because they're struggling. They're struggling. But no, look, I get the value conversation. I get the ranking conversation, why people like to have it. For where we are in August, this shit does not matter. It doesn't mean anything. When you tell me Kirk is the 8th best quarterback or the 12th best quarterback, that doesn't actually change anything about what the Vikings are going to do in 2021. If Kirk is the 8th best quarterback, there's no opportunity to get a quarterback that's better than him right now. If he's the 15th best quarterback, same thing. So when we post these stats, it's not about trying to figure out whether Kirk is good or not. It's about trying to figure out what Kirk needs to do differently to improve his game, or how can the Vikings how can we define Kirk's strengths and have the Vikings use those strengths in a way that ends up with a better Vikings product on the field, winning games. If you're just here to not try to figure out how this team is going to win games, if you're just here to say Kirk is a number on this list and that makes me feel good or bad, then you're really just, wasting your time with these conversations, because again, there's no other option than Kirk right now. It's not like we're saying that quarterback number 20 is going to be easier to replace than quarterback number 8 right now, because it's Kirk no matter what. And here in August, we're a month away where all these rankings, all these projections are going to go straight out the window, because our thoughts of which quarterbacks are good or which quarterbacks are bad change on a weekly basis. And that especially applies to Kirk Cousins. So let's just either have a productive debate or move on and tell us it doesn't matter.
Let's jump in, because one of the things that often comes up in this Kirk debate, in this Kirk conversation, is the offensive line. And it wouldn't be a Vikings offseason if some way, somehow, something related to the offensive line didn't make it into the news. So, Nick, we'll start with you on this one. Man of the people, but mostly because you're also a lawyer. Yes. What is it that we should make of the story that was broken initially by Courtney Cronin, that Dennison was out as Vikings offensive line coach, and then maybe he wasn't out, and then there was, it looks like some shade being thrown around in the local media, and then Dennison is still with the team, but he's no longer the offensive line coordinator. Nick, help us make sense of this, and then guys, I guess, how do we expect this to play out?
There's this beautiful
mug
there.
And David has just put this wonderful picture of Dennison on top of Nick's face. It is a little disconcerting, but we will jump in. Nick, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, and it's tough. I mean, the Vikings were really in a bind because the NFL, the way the Tier 1 status works is if you aren't vaccinated, you lose your Tier 1 and Tier 2 status. You can't be like in the same room as the players or the coaches. You can't go to meetings. You can't be on the field. You're basically a Zoom coach, and Zoom coach isn't really a coach, right? So, I mean, they're not going to force Dennison to get vaccinated, against his will or anything. But you can't to not even get into like the competitive disadvantage of putting your other players' health at risk, putting your players can't play if you have a COVID outbreak. You could be forced to forfeit a game. So to not even get into that, to have a coach who can't be in the who can't do the coaching points because he's not able to be there hands-on with the players. Like you just can't. I don't care how good of a coach you are. If you can't be hands-on with the players, you can't be a coach. So they were able today to work out something.
Nick, you're making a very, very important point here, but we have yet another time here on Twitter where someone is not being very nice. And this time it's CTP on CTP crime. We have Drew saying he would much rather see Dennison plastered over your face than having to see you actually talking about your point.
Oh man.
And
wow.
So I need you to respond to Drew before you get back to what you were saying about Dennison, because that's just mean. It's just mean.
Early on in my Twitter career, I was two separate randos on Twitter compared me to Subway Jared. So since then, nothing can be worse than being like, oh wow, doesn't he look a little bit like Subway Jared? It's like, oh man.
Jeez.
So that's why I got this beard now, because hopefully the resemblance isn't there as much anymore.
hey, don't let Drew talk to you like that. Drew won't even do a live show. He's audio only, and I don't know if you've ever seen a radio host, but none of them are all that good.
Hey,
I'm sorry, Nick.
I mean, they're no Jamal Crawfords. I'll say that, right?
I'm sorry, Nick. I cut you off. Continue.
No, but I'm glad they were able to look. Dennison has been good in I would say broadly, and I think a lot of fans would agree with this. Dennison has done some good things in the run game design. They've been pretty effective run blockers. considering how green the offense, it's a lot of young guys and, Dakota Dozier's in the world. So they've been maybe a little impressive with the run game blocking and pretty unimpressive with the pass game blocking. So, but as bad as like Dennison is, you never want to, lose your offensive line coach the day before training camp starts. So this is a tough situation for the team to be in. I'm glad they were able to keep him on as like a senior offensive advisor, kind of what we saw and a couple other coaches in the past do so with the Vikings. So it sounds like they're going to keep him on in like an advisory capacity. He'll help with game planning. Maybe he'll continue to scheme up the run game and think about the best ways to attack teams. Thank you, Seth. I appreciate that.
He's a freeloader, man. But just fire the guy. The freeloader.
Yeah.
Eric, does this matter? Did it affect the lines at all? Like a Dennison out, I guess not just from like the betting perspective, but as like, say, in your day job, if you're modeling like the Vikings moving forward, is Dennison being pulled out of that and having an unknown going in or a kind of unknown? Does that affect your outlook for the team?
So Dennison has, I actually did this. So O-line continuity. Dennison here is the third. His offensive lines have been worth about a quarter of a win. And that's like 30 something in the NFL during the PFF era. Sort of contrast that with like, Starnecchia was about a win. Stoutland, which is Eagles offensive line coach, about a win. Callahan, which went with Stefanski to Cleveland, about 0.8 of a win. So, like, I mean, I don't think that he's like irreplaceable. I do know that it's every offensive lineman that you don't have from a continuity standpoint from the previous year is worth about a quarter of a point to the point spread in games, right? So, like, I think when you look at like the combination, Dennison's probably losing him's probably a negative, but having like I think right guard and left tackle having new players, even if we believe that they're going to be good, like I think it's a special issue. Like if this was a veteran offensive line, I think that you could probably curb this better. The fact that they're depending likely on a rookie who has come down with an injury already, like. He's not starting out right away. And then Wyatt Davis, who I think we all like, but he's also coming in as a rookie at an interior offensive line, a position that's really hard to start an NFL career at, as we've seen numerous times with the Vikings. Like, I think those compound a little bit. Now, the betting markets have basically been bullish on the Vikings since I started tweeting about them. Like, I go in every single week and I update like our picks or whatever. Or I update like where the betting markets are. And people like the Vikings win total went up even a little bit, even after the Rodgers news. So like, I don't think people are not negative on the Vikings betting. I mean, the fact that their win total is 9 is a little low, I think, per some Vikings fans, but it did open at 8.5. And all it's done is gotten more expensive as the offseason's gone on.
I mean, Dennison's just a creature of the pandemic, man. He's going to be doing Zoom meetings. He's going to be going to outdoor malls at 10 in the morning. He's going to be taking those 3 p.m. naps.
All the good things.
Get your ass in
He
camp,
He saw what Gary was doing in retirement and was like, man, I want that too. But also
he's living that Don Capers life this year now.
Like, I'd like my check, but I'd also like not to come into the office. Flip, Miles is gone. And so we can't have the back and forth, the debate that I was hoping to have. That would have been awkward anyway with the delay. But I still want to go to you first. I need you to talk to me about Dede Westbrook and how you feel about this addition to the team, because it's been months and months and months and months and months of you being very anti the Vikings add a player like a Dede Westbrook, but they got him. They got him for cheap. And so now that he's here, Nick's been posting some clips. It looks like the man can still play if he's healthy. What are your thoughts about this addition, how it can help the team?
My thoughts are that when he sucks, at least we only paid him $1 million. So it was a good deal. Good try. Hope for the best.
No chance that Dede Westbrook is an impactful player for the Vikings this season, as far as you're concerned.
I'll give it a 10% chance.
Whew. Wow. Okay, well, since you threw a percentage out, I got it. Dr. Eager, What are you looking like? What are you expecting from Dede Westbrook this year?
Hold on. I have my projections here. Dede. All right, the guy that broke the salary cap. I have
the very same.
King Day.
I'm with Flip, I guess. Like we don't have him like we have him like double-digit catches, I guess. Like they haven't used a third wide receiver in forever. Like how do we expect that to change? Do we expect a guy signed late July to completely change the complexion of their offense? Like I don't know. I mean, there is an opportunity there because they don't have they don't have Rudolph anymore. But they'll probably still run a lot of 12 personnel, right? So
And Zim even said that today. He was like, I mean, it's good to have this guy, but we also really like Conklin. We like our tight ends, blah, 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 blah. So, I don't think Dede Westbrook is like this incredible game changer. I mean, he was like the Jaguars wide receiver 6 heading into camp last year, and that was a 1-win team. So it's fair if folks want to like slow down the hype train a little bit. At the same time, like I think Westbrook's a good player. He's not like an amazing player, but I think he can be like a Jarius Wright level wide receiver 3. He's really fast. The big thing with him is he's never healthy. It's always like a million things with him, not just this latest ACL tear that he's still, that's why he wasn't signed until now, was this ACL tear last year. But his shoulder was injured coming into camp last year. He's had all sorts of issues, and he's like rail thin, like 100, he's 6 foot, like 180 pounds or something, just like a twig. So kind of like Alexander Hollins a little bit, or like Jeff Bede, who like never really cracked the final roster, similar mold, but like, man, if he's healthy, he's a good route runner. He's extremely fast. He's got sub 4.4 speed. He's got a lot of value as a punt returner. He's, not only can he like secure the punt, which is the hardest thing about being a punt returner, but he's really good after the catch or with the ball in his hands too. So I think the biggest thing I see for him is I think the heavy favorite right now to be the punt returner. And the Vikings punt, usually punt return is like, there's not a lot of edge there, but when you're as bad as the Vikings were last year, like not having a guy muff punts and cough up games, that's big. Having a guy who can average more than 4 yards per punt return, like dead last in the NFL, that's like, those will add up over the year. And then on top of that, the fact that like, the Vikings, they like to run mesh, or, like Jarius Wright made all his money running crossing routes on third down. And Dede Westbrook can uncover really easily because he's impossible to stick with in man coverage, just because like there aren't a lot of guys as fast as him. So I think if he's healthy, which is a big if with him, but if he is healthy, he does some good things. He's not like a game changer, but when the competition in the wide receiver room is Chad Beebe and Olabisi Johnson, I like his chances to win the wide receiver 3 job. I do think he's a step up from the Beebes and the BCs of the world. So I'm excited.
Rapid fire then. More catches this year. More catches, more yards. Dede or Beebe? Nick, which one are you going with?
Dede, not close. Come on.
Okay, Eric, Dede or Beebe? Where are you at?
I'm going to be contrarian. I think Beebe.
Flip, Dede or Beebe? Where are we at?
To me.
I think the fact that we're paying somebody $1 million to ask this question is just everything.
Yeah.
Is that my entire point?
Hey, Beebe was a vet minimum signing too. I'm just throwing that out there. They wouldn't even tender. They were like, you want to come back for the absolute minimum? Okay.
Let's double down on the bad signings. That'll fix everything.
The thing that
Beebe's
I think
not
that
going to make the roster.
The thing that I think that I like about this signing is the thing I'm worried about the most with Minnesota is if one of those 2 top receivers gets injured, like the Vikings have literally, like, I think that he at least represents like an NFL caliber outside wide receiver, which like if one of those guys gets hurt and Beebe's your 2, like, I just don't know. But I do think Beebe takes like a decent amount of slot reps, to be honest. And, that could be, they were weird. They were weird about Jarius Wright. They were weird with Treadwell. They've been weird before. And I think that this might be an example, but he does give them depth that I think is important.
We got to move on because like we can't use injuries as a reason that it's a good size, and he's more likely to get injured than Thielen or Jefferson. Like, do we got to go get another guy in case Dede gets injured now? How many guys we gonna sign for injury?
So Flip, talk to me then. State of the Vikings roster as we head into training camp. how we feeling about things? How we feeling about this team? We had a spell there where we were the favorites to win the NFC North. A short spell. Things were looking good for us.
Hang it up, though. You got to hang that shit up, though.
Talk to me, Flip. How we feeling about it? How we feeling about the roster?
I think it's a good roster. It's real similar to how the Vikings have built in this post-Kirk era we're in, or during Kirk's era in Minnesota.
Was that Freudian, Flip? Was that Freudian?
No. Ton of talent at the top. They have a starting 22 that can play with anybody in the league. I truly believe that. And then you have like that same young depth underneath. So it's a roster that, again, can compete. It has upside. The question is, number one, who are the guys who are going to provide that upside? And then number two, this team kind of has the same weaknesses as they did as the 2019 team. So they're just going to need a few players, whether it's an Irv Smith or a Cam Dantzler or even like a Garrett Bradbury or a Stephen Weatherly, to be the upside to kind of take us past what was achieved in 2019. That's kind of my opinion. Also, Dakota Dozier is still technically starting, so there is a limit to how excited you can be.
Nick, how do you feel about the team?
I'm feeling good.
You've written quite a bit. We may have to try to put the link in the show notes. You wrote a banger of a piece that also moved markets. It's not just Eric moving markets. Nick drops a piece talking about the Vikings. Lo and behold, the Vikings moved to favorites in the NFC North. Nothing else was going on in the news. I'm not sure what else happened.
Life
savings, Nick dropped an article, and it all changed.
Yeah, I was on an ESPN radio spot this morning, and the host also agreed with me that the Vikings looked like a 10-7 team right now, which, sometimes I get a little nervous that the homer is coming out. So when like objective third parties come out with the same takes, I feel a little bit more confident in myself. Yeah, top to bottom, I think this looks like this roster has it's a pretty complete roster. I like, the guys they added in free agency.
A homer take is 10-7?
I don't know. Look at the markets right now. They see it as like a 9-win team, and you don't get more objective than the betting markets. So I don't know. I feel like, look, you don't add rookies and free agent cast-offs don't turn you into a contending team. However, they can be the glue guys that allow the other blue chip talents on the team to carry the team. And right now, I do think between Jefferson, between Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Danielle Hunter, Eric Kendricks, Harrison Smith, there is a lot of talent on this team, a lot of top-end talent. And now that they've added, Dalvin Tomlinson, now they've added Mackenzie Alexander, Bashad Breeland, Patrick Peterson, none of these guys has to be like elite players, but so long as they're just merely solid, and Eric Kendricks, Harrison Smith, Danielle Hunter, blah, 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 or like continue their level of play, that's a lot of ifs. Of course, a lot of things have to go right, but you can see that the Vikings are in a good spot where if they get the right breaks, I can see them winning playoff games. So I'm happy. Aaron Rodgers is back, so I'm not going to be crazy and say they're favored to win the division or anything, but they've given themselves a fighting chance, which Spielman always likes to do. And I like, having some actual legitimate hope and not just we'll mail it in this year. So I'm feeling good.
Sean just asked a question, Nick. I want to get your take on what signing do you expect to be the most impactful?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's tough because none of the guys I think are like amazing. Like the one that I probably think has the highest potential is, or the one that I personally think will be the most impactful, just because it's a premium position, is Patrick Peterson. That's also the one that I have the biggest questions about, because so much depends on like what are they going to ask of him, and how much is he going to continue to decline athletically. He's going to hit a point at some point in his career where he just can't like play anymore. And it kind of looked a little bit like he was looking like that last year in Arizona. Now they're not going to be asking him to be doing the same things, but like if they can get him to be like an above average starting cornerback, that's extremely valuable. It's a lot more valuable than like the upside. Dalvin Tomlinson, I'm pretty confident. I have a lot more confidence that Dalvin Tomlinson is going to be a good player, but like a good nose/3 technique swing tackle is a lot less valuable than like an above average outside cornerback. Patrick Peterson playing, 1,000 snaps or something out there. So I feel like he has the potential to be the most impactful, and I have a lot more confidence in Patrick Peterson playing above average than I do, like, say, Xavier Woods or Mackenzie Alexander or Dede Westbrook or any of the other guys they brought in. So, and especially considering, that was one of my long form pieces this offseason was looking at what Patrick Peterson doesn't do well anymore. Look at what he still does well. Look at what Mike Zimmer could do to retool him the same way he did with Terrence Newman. I feel like he's the one that I would expect. I would hope I would have the most confidence if I were a betting man. I bet on Peterson to be the biggest impact.
All right, Eric, last but not least, what is the state of this Vikings roster? How are you stacking them, I guess, first with the NFC North and then with the rest of the NFL?
It's like the Packers should be the favorite. I think that's pretty clear. But Detroit's not contending this year. Goff is, from what I've heard, is looking terrible. So that's if you're the Vikings, it's an NFC that's profoundly winnable. You look at, Tampa Bay is the favorite. I think they could run away and hide this year, but we saw Kansas City do that last year. And that doesn't necessarily mean you win the Super Bowl. And then, Green Bay should be Green Bay is, I think, the 2 in the NFC. After that, do you really think the Vikings are all that much worse than the Rams? Stafford, to me, Stafford's a coach killer. They just signed in, I almost said something, but I don't necessarily all the moves the Rams have made. San Francisco might start a rookie for half the season. Seattle, and then the NFC East is kind of a dumpster. So the table set for the Vikings if they want to, get up in that upper echelon. The problem is I think it's just difficult for them because of the way that things are constructed, how many things they need to go right. So I don't know, if those things go right, if what Nick's saying, if Peterson becomes valuable, Dalvin Tomlinson becomes what they paid for, Kirk has another career season, as does Jefferson and Cook, they can compete with anybody. If any of one of those
can
things
we throw
goes
Ryan
wrong,
Ortega out of the chat? How can we get Ryan Ortega out of the chat? That Dede Westbrook will be the most valuable signing and will take Thielen's job is certainly a take for us to have here in July.
Yeah. if any one thing goes wrong for Minnesota, that's where I think that the issues will come. That's always the case. And but if everything goes right, this is setting up to be. If they were in the AFC, it'd be different. The NFC is, I think, a winnable conference.
All right. So Mary's made a couple comments, and Mary, being the fan that she is, when Mary says something, we got to talk about it on the show before we get out of here. Mary speaks, we got to listen. Mary's brought up the topic of leadership. And that's something, you can't, there's not a spreadsheet for leadership. It's one of those things, Flip will sometimes maybe refer to as, who has the swagger, who's the person that the team is rallying around. But Flip, as you think about this team, as we go into this upcoming season, who are the leaders that you see kind of taking this team to the next level? Because we've talked at different points about there being maybe a void of leadership at times, especially on the offensive side of the ball. What are your thoughts as we get into this next season about kind of the leadership and all that goes into that for that side of the ball and for the team overall?
Yeah, it's the first year where I can't count on your boy Kyle Rudolph, Jason, to be the team captain. Real talk, I think the NFL can be a little too old school in how veterans have to be the leaders. I look at this team, I look at the personalities, what we see on Sundays. I'm not there in the locker room every day, but to me, the guys who have the most swagger and the guys who are the most vocal about how this team has to perform, it's Justin Jefferson, it's Dalvin Cook, it's Brian O'Neill. Those are the three on offense. You want some on defense? A lot of people saying Patrick Peterson steps into that role. I just don't sure, if things go great, Patrick Peterson is going to help the young guys along. If things don't go well, Patrick Peterson is going to start thinking about where he's playing in 2022. So on defense, I kind of just automatically default to Harrison Smith and Eric Kendricks. Danielle Hunter, I hope he steps up. You know, he's always a leader on the field, but those are the core guys, in my opinion.
All right. And Eric, you brought up O-line continuity. Is there anything to continuity, I guess, on the other sides of the ball? Or is it just like good players, if they stick around, like your team's good? If you have shitty players and they stick around, your team stays bad? Or is there any signal in like keeping a group together over time? Do teams tend to get better, worse? How does that usually go?
I think, continuity matters. It's not as important as having good players, though. Offensive line, I think, is a different thing because offensive linemen, generally speaking, are not, offensive line position is truly like the most, I think, weak link system. So, having that weak link buoyed by being familiar is a really important thing. But that's sort of what, I mean, that's what the Vikings are going up against this year. That is the one thing that all the people who are super positive about the team, I think that's the one thing that they're overlooking is the fact that the offensive line, has never been all that great in the Cousins era, and now you lose your O-line coach and 2 stars. Like you're changing out 2 starters. I think one at a very important position.
All right, yeah. Nick, bring us home. Final words. Continuity, leadership, anything in the chat, whatever you want to say, Nick. You get the last word on the show.
Yeah, I think on the offensive line, that's the point where even the homers are like, yeah, it's hard to be too optimistic about what we're going on there. The thing is, I think the offensive line is going to be really good. Maybe in a few years, they've certainly got the potential. I mean, almost no team has invested more draft capital into the offensive line than the Vikings have over the past 4 years. So, I mean, they've got 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, and a third-rounder right now.
Where else are you going to find undersized centers, Nick?
Not. You got to take those in the first round. To be fair, I do think Bradbury does some insanely impressive things in the run game. He gets asked to do crazy things, and he executes them very well, and he's a key part of their run team. I do think it's fair, though, asking whether that's worth all the crap he brings in the pass game, where teams know they can exploit him, and he can't even hold up against a like an off-ball linebacker at blitzing. So that's if you're looking at reasons for pessimism about the Vikings, number 1 is the offensive line, and number 2 is the special teams. Because they were nearly historically bad. I think they were the 3rd worst in DVOA over the past decade. Last year, and they got rid of Dan Bailey, but they replaced him with his journeyman, who's not really a starter himself. They kept the same punter, so that's another reason to be a little pessimistic about this team. But at the same time, we'll end on a happier note. I do think with this they had a good draft. I think consensus wise, they had, I think, top 10 draft by most draft grades. They had a really good free agency session. They added a lot of talented players. Nobody who's not going to necessarily be a game changer, but a lot of guys who are solid glue guys who are going to help, keep the roster together. And I do think they have a lot of like Pro Bowl caliber players. I think Justin Jefferson has a potential to be, emerge as like a top 10, maybe even top 5 wide receiver in the NFL this year. He certainly played at that level as a rookie. We'll see if he can keep it up. I think he can. And to have Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Danielle Hunter, Eric Kendricks, this is a good team. It's got a lot of like high-end talent. It's also got a lot of like solid starters. So I feel like this is a team that can go far. I think a lot of it comes down to coaching. A lot of it is going to come down to the offensive line. But, they've put themselves in a position where if things go right, very good things could happen. And so it's just a matter of, will this be the year that they finally get some lucky breaks?
Kirktober could happen. What is Kirktober in January? What is
we just need? Yeah, that's exactly it. We just need Kirkuary. Not Kirkvember, okay. Not Kirktober. Kirkuary is what gets you to elite Joe Flacco Dragon in the playoffs. That's all we need.
There we go.
That is
so we need
January
to just
February.
Make the playoffs and Kirkuary, and it's Super Bowl, baby. And Eric can take his number 8 ranking and shove it. That is it. That is all. That is the show. Viewers, thanks for hanging out with us. Listeners, thanks for checking it out. David, come on in, man. Tell the folks what's coming up and then play that music.
Aha. Well, It is our preseason as well. We're trying to get over the bugs of making
all right, Flip, you got to beatbox us out.
So, but tomorrow night we'll have Vikings Happy Hour with special guest from Sports Illustrated joining the show.
Yes, indeed.
Until
Grab a
then,
drink, come through. That's
until
a
then,
tease right there.
Skol, everybody!
Skol!
Go.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody!